Appreciate the enhancement, darling. Ethan beamed as he walked into the family room, carelessly throwing his designer eyewear onto the side table. He positioned himself there with obnoxious self-assurance in his custom-fitted outfit and spotless new footwear. His travel bags displaying expensive brand names. Premium seating to Europe, upscale accommodations. This is the lifestyle I've been deprived of, Sarah. I found myself unable to contain my amusement. What's amusing? He demanded, his expression darkening. Oh, Ethan, I replied, moving my head from side to side. You're completely unaware of your actions. I'm Sarah, 34 years of age, employed in cybersecurity. And for 7 years I was wed to someone who proved to be a warning sign masquerading as charisma. Ethan consistently played the role of the eloquent speaker, the visionary, the individual who could make any idea sound brilliant. In contrast, I was the person who brought these concepts to reality, maintaining stable employment while he jumped between poorly conceived ventures. I overlooked the red flags, the financial concealment, the endless justifications for his unemployment, because I hoped we functioned as partners. However, at 2 a.m. last week, Ethan committed an error he couldn't smooth-talk his way past. I had been resting upstairs when the incident occurred. He must have waited for confirmation of my deep sleep before creeping down to my computer. My cybersecurity background had trained me to watch for potential fraud, though I never anticipated needing these abilities within my household. That evening, Ethan accessed my computer to reach one of my credit accounts. He recorded the information, captured several photographs with his mobile device, and crept back to bed as if nothing had transpired. The following morning, while enjoying my coffee, I discovered numerous notifications on my device. Opening my financial application revealed approximately $50,000 in purchases. Luxury apparel, costly timepieces, premium airline tickets to Paris. My heart dropped as I understood the situation. Ethan was responsible, naturally. Rather than becoming frantic, I found myself grinning. The account he had accessed wasn't personal. It was a practice credit card connected to an educational program I oversee at my workplace. It's created to instruct businesses on identifying and handling fraud. Each purchase automatically generates a notification sent directly to law enforcement. Ethan was oblivious that he had transformed himself into a training example. I contacted my attorney Chloe that morning. This will be unbelievable, I explained, sharing every detail. She couldn't suppress her amusement. Hold on, let me understand, she said through her laughter. He took a practice card connected to fraud monitoring? Precisely, I confirmed, my tone composed yet tinged with gratification. I doubt he understood his actions. He likely believed he was being shrewd. Shrewd, Chloe responded. He's foolish. Every purchase he makes will be reported. Have authorities reached out yet? Not yet, but it's inevitable. Throughout the remainder of the week, I remained silent, observing how extensively Ethan would continue. He left a message on the counter days later. Taking personal time. Don't expect me. I understood exactly what this meant. He was using my stolen funds to enjoy himself overseas. Nightly, I monitored the fraud notifications arriving, upscale dining establishments, luxury accommodations, and expensive shopping excursions. Each alert felt like a minor triumph. 3 days into his spending spree, Agent Keller, a federal investigator handling the case, contacted me. We've detected substantial fraudulent activity connected to your account, he stated. Do you know who might be involved? Yes, I answered immediately. My spouse. Following a brief silence, he said, Your spouse? I detailed the circumstances, including the card's connection to a cybersecurity program. Agent Keller released a quiet whistle. That's unprecedented, he remarked. You'll need to give an official statement, but considering what we've already identified, he faces serious consequences. When Ethan returned home, his pride swollen from a week of excess, I was prepared. He strutted into the family room as if nothing had occurred, displaying the results of his stolen spending. Appreciate the enhancement, he declared with an arrogant smile. You really exceeded expectations this time. I couldn't contain the amusement that emerged. Ethan scowled, clearly anticipating my anger. What's amusing? He demanded sharply. Oh, Ethan, I said, shaking my head. You're about to discover. Ethan placed his luxury travel bag on the floor with a self-satisfied sound. Honestly though, Sarah, he said, removing his tailored coat and placing it on the couch back, you should have informed me about that card long ago. Consider how much enjoyment we could have experienced. I positioned myself against the kitchen counter, arms folded. And how exactly did you expect this to conclude? He smirked, removing his shoes. You're constantly tense about finances. It's not as if you couldn't manage it. I assumed you'd forgive me once you witnessed how content it made me. His complete audacity would have been maddening if it weren't so pitiful. I suppressed laughter, understanding that every moment of his boasting was additional evidence against him. So the timepieces, the flights, the accommodations. You believed all of that was simply a present from me? Not believed, he said, indicating himself. Understood. It's time you relaxed. I smiled tightly, revealing nothing. I'm certain. After Ethan went to shower, humming some irritating melody, I messaged Chloe. He's returned. Ready to proceed. Her response was instant. Perfect. I'll notify Agent Keller. During the previous week, Chloe and Agent Keller had been building the case against Ethan. His every action had been monitored, every purchase carefully documented. From the designer clothing stores to the luxury Parisian hotels. His indulgence created a portrait of someone who believed themselves invincible. Ethan was unaware how deeply he had sealed his fate. Agent Keller had confirmed that the fraud notifications from the practice account had already initiated a comprehensive investigation. We'll bring him for questioning when you're ready, he had said during our previous conversation, but I suggest allowing him to walk into it independently. The more overconfident he becomes, the better. Now, listening to Ethan's off-key singing from the bathroom, I experienced an almost surreal tranquility. For years I had allowed him to exploit my trust, my generosity, my reliability. But this time, he would face the repercussions of undervaluing me. After Ethan emerged, wrapped in a luxurious towel and smiling carelessly, he collapsed onto the couch. You should have witnessed Paris, he said, reaching into his bag to retrieve a gleaming gold timepiece. The boutiques, the dining establishments. It was dreamlike. Sounds amazing, I said, leaning in the doorway. Share more details. He began a thorough description of his week-long spending, complete with dramatic gestures and unnecessary details about the champagne quality at some rooftop establishment. Every statement felt like an accusation, a confession he didn't realize he was providing. He was oblivious that I was recording the entire discussion on my device, the file prepared to be sent to Agent Keller. And the finest part, Ethan said, lifting the watch admiringly. Nobody had any suspicions. Not even you. The following morning, Chloe and I met over coffee to finalize the schedule. He has no defense, she said, reviewing the evidence we had gathered. The fraud notifications, the purchases, his recorded conversation from last evening. It's foolproof. Agent Keller is prepared to bring him for questioning. They're coordinating with local law enforcement to execute the arrest. I nodded as the significance of everything began settling. What occurs afterward? He'll face multiple accusations including fraud, identity theft, and unauthorized financial account usage, Chloe explained. Considering the monetary amount involved, it won't be minimal consequences. Best scenario, he negotiates a deal and avoids imprisonment. Worst scenario, he faces years incarcerated. Part of me considered feeling sympathy for him, but then I recalled the arrogant smile on his face, how he had displayed his stolen items without considering the harm he had inflicted. This wasn't merely an error. It was a pattern of selfishness and entitlement I had been blind to for far too long. Later that evening, as Ethan relaxed on the couch browsing his device, I heard the distinctive sound of knocking at the entrance. My pulse quickened not with fear, but with expectation. I approached the door and opened it to find Agent Keller and two uniformed officers on the porch. "Good evening, Miss Miller," Keller said professionally but warmly. "Is Ethan present?" "He's inside," I said, stepping aside for their entry. "Please make yourselves comfortable." Ethan looked up from his device, his eyebrows drawing together in confusion. "What's happening?" he asked, sitting upright. Agent Keller approached him with calm authority that made the room feel smaller. "Ethan Miller, you're under investigation for multiple counts of credit card fraud and unauthorized financial account usage. We'd like you to accompany us for questioning." Ethan's complexion paled, his confidence disappearing instantly. "What? No, this must be an error," he stammered, looking to me for support. "Sarah, tell them this is insane." I crossed my arms, tilting my head slightly. "I'm not sure, Ethan. You've been quite active lately. Perhaps you should explain it to them." As the officers read his rights and escorted him toward the door, Ethan continued protesting. "You can't do this, Sarah. This is a setup. You're my wife. Aren't you supposed to support me?" "Interesting," I said, leaning against the doorway. "I thought spouses weren't supposed to steal from each other. I suppose we're both learning something today." Ethan glared at me, his bravado replaced by desperation. "You won't escape consequences for this." Smiled. "Oh, Ethan, I already have." The door closed with a sharp sound as the officers escorted Ethan away, leaving the family room eerily silent. I stood there momentarily, staring at the empty space where he had been standing minutes earlier. My heart raced not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the moment. He was gone, finally, undeniably gone. But this wasn't finished, not yet. Approximately an hour later, Chloe called. "He's with Agent Keller now," she said, her voice calm but firm. "They've begun questioning him." From what Keller shared, Ethan is already attempting to manipulate the story in his favor. "Of course he is," I said, rolling my eyes. "Let me guess. He's portraying himself as the victim." "Exactly," Chloe replied with dry amusement. "He's claiming you granted permission to use the card. But don't worry. Between the fraud notifications, the purchases, and your recording, he has no chance." The next morning, Agent Keller called with news. "We have everything needed," he said. "Your husband's soon-to-be ex-husband admitted to using the card but insists he didn't know it was connected to fraud detection. He's attempting to blame the confusion on you." "That sounds typical," I said, leaning back in my chair. "What happens next?" "We're proceeding with charges," Keller explained. "He faces multiple fraud counts and unauthorized financial account usage. Given the monetary amount involved, he'll face significant consequences. The buyer protection programs flagged his luxury purchases, so those are being refunded. You're not responsible for anything." The relief I experienced was immediate and overwhelming. For days, I had carried the burden of Ethan's actions, worried that somehow he would slip through the cracks. But now, hearing Keller's confidence, I realized the full extent of my victory. "Thank you," I said, "for everything." "Don't thank me," Keller said. "This case practically solved itself. You handled this brilliantly." The consequences hit Ethan harder than I anticipated. News spread quickly among our mutual friends and acquaintances about his arrest, and it wasn't long before his carefully constructed image of the charming, carefree husband began crumbling. Nicole, the woman I suspected he'd been seeing, apparently abandoned him immediately upon hearing about the charges. The designer items he had flaunted were confiscated, the flights he had booked were cancelled, and the banks froze his accounts. One evening I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered, and predictably, it was Ethan. "Sarah," he began, his voice subdued and exhausted, "I need to speak with you." I couldn't help but laugh. "Ethan, the only thing you need to do is figure out how to explain yourself to the judge." "Please," he said, his tone shifting to desperation. "I made a mistake, okay? I didn't intend for it to escalate this far. I was just Just what? I interrupted, my voice cold. Just attempting to steal $50,000 from me? Just hoping I wouldn't notice? Just counting on me being too naive or too forgiving to stop you? There was extended silence on the other end. Finally he muttered, "I thought you loved me." I released a sharp breath, my anger boiling over. I did, Ethan. I loved the person I believed you were. But the person who stole from me, who lied to me, who thought he could escape consequences, that's not someone I could ever love. Before he could respond, I ended the call. A week later, Chloe called to confirm that Ethan had accepted a plea agreement. He's avoiding jail time, she explained, but he'll have to repay every cent he attempted to steal and complete community service. Plus his credit will be destroyed for years. That seems appropriate, I said. He always desired the luxurious life. Now he gets to experience how the other half lives. Chloe laughed. You're handling this far better than most people would. It's funny, I said, smiling to myself. For years, I thought Ethan was the one who held our marriage together. I thought his charm, his ambition, his grand ideas were what kept us progressing. But now I see it clearly. I was the one supporting everything. He was just dead weight. The day the divorce documents were finalized, I poured myself wine and sat on the couch, looking around the apartment that now felt entirely and completely mine. Ethan's absence wasn't a loss. It was a gift, an opportunity to rebuild my life without the constant shadow of his selfishness. As I sipped my wine, I thought about the moment he had walked through the door, flaunting his stolen goods and mocking me for the supposed upgrade he had given himself. He had been so confident, so certain of his own brilliance. And now he was the one paying the price. For the first time in years, I felt truly liberated. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the beginning of a life I could finally call my own. The apartment felt eerily quiet in the days following Ethan's arrest. His belongings were gone, what little he hadn't sold or packed into his designer bag, but the space felt lighter, almost as if the weight of his betrayal had been physically removed. For the first time in years, I could sit in my own home without feeling his shadow hovering over me. Chloe visited one afternoon to deliver some final paperwork. "How are you managing?" she asked, settling on the couch with her usual straightforward manner. "Better than expected," I admitted, handing her coffee. "It's strange, but I don't even feel angry anymore. Just relieved." She smiled knowingly. "That's because you've already won. You didn't just survive this, Sarah. You emerged stronger." I contemplated that as we reviewed the documents, finalizing the details of Ethan's financial restitution. It wasn't just about the money, though knowing he would repay every cent was satisfying. It was about finally reclaiming my independence. For years, I had allowed Ethan to dictate our relationship's terms, thinking it was easier to maintain peace. But now I realize that peace built on compromise and silence wasn't peace at all. The official divorce letter arrived a week later, delivered in an unremarkable envelope that felt far too small to contain something so significant. I held it briefly, letting its weight sink in before opening it. My eyes scanned the legal language until I found the words that mattered most: finalized and irrevocable. I sat at the kitchen table, the letter in my hands, and allowed myself a rare moment of reflection. This wasn't the life I had envisioned when I married Ethan. I had pictured stability, partnership, and a future built on mutual trust. But now, as I looked around the home I had rebuilt for myself, I realized I had something better. Freedom, clarity, and the knowledge that I was stronger than I had ever credited myself. Lauren came over that evening with wine and my favorite takeout. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. "And to the absolute disaster you just escaped." I laughed, clinking my glass against hers. "To never settling for less than I deserve." Over the following weeks, I began constructing what my new life would look like. I redecorated the apartment, adding color splashes and personal touches that felt like me. I finally took the solo vacation I had been dreaming about for years, exploring the coast and experiencing the kind of peace that only comes from leaving everything behind temporarily. Ethan attempted to reach out several more times through mutual acquaintances, vague apologies via email, even a laughably tone-deaf letter claiming he had changed. But I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. He had made his choices and I had made mine. Occasionally, I would hear updates about his life through gossip. He was struggling to find employment, his reputation damaged by the fraud charges. He had moved back with his parents, apparently still clinging to the belief that he could talk his way out of anything. I didn't feel sorry for him. If anything, I felt relief. He wasn't my problem anymore. A month after everything was finalized, I stood by my apartment window, sipping morning coffee and watching the city awaken below. Sunlight poured into the living room, highlighting the fresh paint I had chosen, my favorite shade of blue. The space no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like home. It was peaceful, mine, and filled with possibilities. I thought about the journey that brought me here. For years, I had believed in marriage's promise, in the idea of building a life with Ethan. I had ignored the small voice inside warning me that something was wrong, that his charm masked selfishness. But now I understood something important. Walking away wasn't failure, it was strength. Lauren and I met for brunch that weekend, a new ritual we had started since Ethan's departure. Over mimosas and waffles, she asked. "So what's next for you?" I smiled, feeling a mix of excitement and calm that had eluded me for so long. "Honestly, I'm just focusing on myself now. Work's going great, and I've been considering taking a longer vacation. Maybe somewhere quiet near the mountains." She raised her glass. "That's what I want to hear. You deserve it." For the first time in years, I felt like I was making decisions purely for myself. No compromises, no second-guessing, just the freedom to live on my own terms. Occasionally, I still received updates about Ethan from mutual acquaintances. He was struggling to rebuild his life, moving from one low-paying job to the next while trying to repay the money he owed. The designer suits and luxury trips were long gone, replaced by a harsh reality he wasn't prepared for. I didn't dwell on it. He had made his choices and I had made mine. The last time I heard from him was through an email, a long, rambling apology that seemed more self-pitying than sincere. I read the first few lines before deleting it without reply. I didn't need closure from him. I had already found it within myself. One evening I sat on the balcony with wine, reflecting on everything I had experienced. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the fight to reclaim what was mine. It had all led to this moment, and while it hadn't been easy, it had been worthwhile. I no longer felt angry or bitter about what had happened. If anything, I felt grateful. Ethan's betrayal had forced me to confront my own strength, to stop compromising and start prioritizing myself. I had learned to trust my instincts, to value my independence, and to never again let someone else take control of my life. As the city lights flickered in the distance, I raised my glass to the night sky. "Here's to me," I said quietly. "Here's to starting over." And with that, I closed the chapter on Ethan for good, ready to embrace whatever came next.